At 17, I sat alone on a hospital bed, blood dripping into my mouth, my vision spinning, and the scent of antiseptic burning my nose. The nurse tried to ask who had hurt me, but I couldn't answer, not yet. I was scared, not of the pain, not even of the blood, but of what would happen if I told the truth. If I told them that my own brother had done it, that when I reached for help, my mom snatched the phone out of my hand and yelled, "What are you doing?" while my dad muttered behind her, "Drama, queen again." You want to know how I got here? Why my own family protected the person who broke my nose like it was no big deal. Then sit down, like this video, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. My name is Ellie. I'm 29 now, but this story started 12 years ago when I was just a quiet girl living in Westwick Hills with a smile that didn't yet know betrayal. This is the story of how my brother turned on me, how my parents stood by him, and how I made them all regret it. I always thought families were supposed to protect each other. I believed that when someone hurt you, the people who loved you would be the first to stand by your side and fight for you. That's what they showed in movies and TV. That's what I saw in my friends' families. But mine wasn't like that. Growing up in Westwick Hills, we weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. Our house was small, worn, and smelled like old wood and lemon cleaner. My mom worked part-time at a hardware store, and my dad was a mechanic who mostly came home tired and quiet unless he was yelling. My older brother, Dylan, was 3 years older than me, and he was always different. Dylan had a way of charming adults and terrifying kids. At school, teachers called him well-behaved, a leader, and sharp. But at home, he was cruel. He didn't punch every day or throw things all the time. No, he was smarter than that. He'd trip me when no one was looking, call me names when our parents were in the other room, or take my things and break them just enough that it seemed like an accident. At first, I tried to talk to Mom about it. I told her Dylan was mean. She laughed and said, "That's what brothers do." Dad just nodded and turned back to the TV. But it wasn't just teasing. Once, Dylan pushed me so hard against the bathroom sink that I bruised my ribs. When I told Mom, she glanced at my side and said, "Maybe don't play so rough next time." I stopped telling after that, but I wasn't weak. Not really. I just hadn't figured out what power I had yet. Not until it all exploded one fall evening, a few days after Dylan had come home, suspended from school for fighting. That was when everything cracked. It started small. Dylan was in one of his moods, stomping around, slamming doors. I was sitting in the kitchen, doing homework. He walked past me, shoved my chair, and spilled my drink on my notes. I snapped and said, "What is wrong with you?" He stopped, turned around slowly, and looked at me like I'd insulted his soul. "What did you say?" he growled. I stood up, nervous but not scared. I said, "What is your problem?" That's when he grabbed me. I didn't even see it coming. 1 second I was standing, and the next, pain exploded through my face like fireworks behind my eyes. A sick crunch followed, and warm blood rushed down my lip. My knees buckled. I screamed. The pain was unlike anything I'd felt. Not a slap, not a push. He'd punched me, full force. My vision blurred as I grabbed the counter to keep from falling. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. My fingers were slippery with blood, but I managed to dial 911. I didn't get past the first ring. Mom came charging in from the hallway, her face twisted with fury. Not at Dylan, but at me. "What are you doing?" she shrieked and snatched the phone from my hand. I looked at her, stunned. "He broke my nose. I need help." But she wasn't listening. She ended the call, tossed the phone onto the counter, and started yelling about how I always overreacted, how Dylan was just stressed, how this was family business. Then Dad walked in, took one look at me, my face bloodied, my shirt soaked, and muttered under his breath, "Drama queen again." I couldn't believe it. I just stood there, mouth open, blood still dripping down my chin. My nose throbbed, bent out of shape, and they weren't calling the police. They weren't taking me to a hospital. They were blaming me. That night, I sat on my bed in silence, holding tissues to my face. No ice, no bandages, no apologies, just silence from the other side of the wall while Dylan played video games like nothing happened. At school the next day, I told them I walked into a door. I didn't even have to try hard. People believed it, because I was quiet, because my family was normal, because Dylan had that face everyone trusted. But something inside me snapped that night. It wasn't just the bone in my nose. It was the belief that they'd ever love me the way I deserved. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I waited. I planned. And that's when I started writing everything down. Every bruise. Every name they called me. Every time Dylan snapped and no one cared. It became my secret, like my own diary of injustice. And that list would become my weapon. But back then, I was just trying to survive. I still had to get through high school. I still had to eat their food and live under their roof. So I played along. I smiled at teachers. I kept quiet at home. I didn't fight back, not yet. Then one night, 2 weeks after the broken nose, I was home alone with Dylan again. I had just gotten out of the shower and was walking down the hallway in my robe. I heard his door creak open behind me. He followed me to the kitchen, casually grabbing a soda from the fridge. "You gonna cry again tonight, Ellie?" he said with a smirk. I didn't answer. I just turned my back and opened the cabinet to grab a granola bar. That's when I felt it. His hand grabbed my wrist tight. "I asked you a question," he said, voice low. I pulled back, heart racing. "Let go of me." But he didn't. He pushed me backwards, right into the stove. My back hit the metal knobs, and I let out a scream. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just bullying. He wasn't going to stop. Not unless someone made him. And I wasn't going to wait anymore. So I grabbed the one thing within reach. The cast iron skillet on the counter. And I raised it. Hi. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to hear what happened next. I stood there in the kitchen, gripping the cast iron skillet with both hands. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Dylan stared at me, still holding my wrist, his face blank for a second, like he didn't believe I'd actually do anything. But I was done being scared. "Let me go," I said, my voice shaking but loud. He laughed, a slow, mocking chuckle, like I was a little kid pretending to be tough. "What are you going to do with that, Ellie?" "Cook me dinner," he sneered. That's when I swung it. I didn't aim for his head. I wish I could say I had, but I wasn't thinking that far. I just needed him to let me go. The skillet hit his arm with a hard clang, and he yelped, stumbling backward into the fridge, knocking magnets and papers to the floor. I dropped the pan. My hands were shaking too much to hold it. "You psycho!" he shouted, rubbing his arm. "You actually hit me." I didn't say anything. I backed away toward the living room, grabbing my phone from the counter. I knew better than to try 911 again. Not with how it went last time. But I had a backup plan now. I texted my best friend from school, Jada. I need help. Please come now." I dropped the phone in my pocket and went to the front door, locking it. Dylan followed me, his face flushed red. "You better unlock that," he said, his voice low and threatening. "No," I said. "You touch me again, I swear I'll scream, so loud the neighbors call the cops themselves." He took a step forward. I grabbed the lamp off the end table and raised it like a weapon. He paused, glaring, and then shook his head. "You're crazy," he muttered. "You hit me first. If Mom and Dad find out, they'll kill you." I said nothing. I wasn't going to argue. Not this time. He stormed off to his room, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell from the wall. I stood there in the silence, the broken glass still rattling on the floor near my feet, and waited. Jada showed up 20 minutes later. She knocked once, and I opened the door fast. She stepped inside, took one look at my face, and said, "Tell me everything." I pulled her into the living room, heart still pounding, and told her about the broken nose, the skillet, everything. She didn't ask questions. She didn't try to comfort me with soft words. She just nodded and said, "We're not keeping this quiet anymore." But the problem was I couldn't leave. I was still 17. I had no job, no car, and my parents still controlled everything. My food, my phone plan, even my school paperwork. Jada offered to talk to her mom about letting me stay over the weekend. I agreed. I needed time to think. So I packed a bag and left without saying anything. I didn't even leave a note. When Mom came home from work and saw I wasn't there, she texted me, "Mom, where are you?" "Mom, are you seriously trying to run away over a fight?" "Mom, your brother is icing his arm because you attacked him with a pan. What's wrong with you?" I ignored every message. That night at Jada's, her mom made us grilled cheese and tomato soup. She didn't ask me many questions, but she looked at the bruise on my face and the old cuts on my arm and said, "You don't deserve that. Ever." And just like that, I cried. Really cried. It was the first time in a long time someone had made me feel like I mattered. Like I wasn't overreacting or being dramatic. I stayed with them for the whole weekend. And by Monday morning, I didn't want to go back at all. But I had no choice. I couldn't miss more school. And I didn't want to get Jada's mom in trouble either. So I returned. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Dad was in the garage. Mom was folding laundry in the living room. She didn't look at me right away. She just said, "Are you ready to act like part of this family again?" I didn't answer. She glanced up and sighed. "You can't keep running away, Ellie. Life doesn't work like that." I walked past her and went straight to my room. Later that night, during dinner, Dylan showed up like nothing had happened. He wore a smug little smile and said grace like we were some perfect family from a church commercial. Mom even gave him an extra chicken leg. I stared down at my plate, trying not to let the rage boil over. Then Dad said, "I called the school. You'll need to start making up those days you missed. And don't think you're skipping out again just because your feelings got hurt." That's when I realized they were going to pretend it never happened. Like everything was normal again. Except it wasn't. Not for me. I started recording things secretly on my phone. Not just the fights. The way they talked to me. The gaslighting. The way Dylan cornered me when no one was watching. I saved everything to a hidden folder backed up to the cloud. And I started keeping a second list. People who might help me one day. Jada. Her mom. My chemistry teacher, Ms. Benton, who once pulled me aside and said I looked tired and scared. I was building my escape plan, piece by piece. But then, 1 week later, something happened that nearly shattered all of it. It was Saturday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the hallway. Dylan walked by and bumped into me hard on purpose. I dropped a pile of shirts. "Watch it," I snapped. He stopped, turned. "What did you say to me?" I didn't back down. I said, "Watch it." He grinned, wicked and slow. "You really think anyone believes you now? You're a nutcase, Ellie. You hit me with a skillet. You bruised my face." I shouted. He laughed again. "No proof." That's when Mom's voice echoed from the kitchen. "What's going on out there?" "She's flipping out again," Dylan called out. "Just ignore her." And Mom did. I stared at him, the folded laundry at my feet, my fingers curled into fists. He leaned in close and whispered, "Next time you hit me, I won't stop at your nose." Then he walked away. That night, I decided it was time to take it to the next level. I didn't just want to escape. I wanted revenge. So I waited until everyone was asleep. I snuck into Dylan's room. I didn't hurt him. I didn't take anything. I just opened his drawer, found the little silver USB drive he always carried around, and slipped it into my hoodie pocket. He used that thing for everything. School files, photos, private stuff. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but what I found would change everything. And it starts with a folder labeled Fall Bash 2020. I sat on my bed in the dark, only the glow of my laptop lighting up my face. The house was silent. Everyone was asleep. I plugged Dylan's USB into the side of my computer. Heart pounding so loud I thought it might wake someone. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe some embarrassing photos. Maybe something to finally get him grounded, or better, expelled. But what I saw made my stomach drop. Inside the folder labeled Fall Bash 2020 were videos. 7 of them, each labeled by time and date. The thumbnails showed crowded rooms, red Solo cups, and people dancing. Some were clearly drunk. And then I saw her, one of the girls from Dylan's class. In the corner of one video, she sat on a couch, dazed. Someone had written on her face with a marker. Dylan and his friends laughed in the background, recording her like she was a joke. She looked barely conscious. And in the next clip, it got worse. Much worse. They didn't touch her, not in that video. But the things they said, the way they mocked her, the way Dylan shouted at the camera, "She won't even remember this!" As he poured a drink on her shirt, it made my skin crawl. I felt sick. And it wasn't just one girl. There were others. Passed out at parties. Mocked. Filmed. Humiliated. And Dylan kept them. Like trophies. I didn't sleep that night. I copied everything onto my own private drive, locked it with a password, and tucked the USB back in his drawer before sunrise. He never noticed. But now I had something. Real leverage. I couldn't go to the police yet. If I did, I'd have to explain how I got the videos, and that might backfire. But I could do something. I spent the next few weeks pretending everything was fine. I was careful, smiling when I needed to, keeping my head down. But every day I was planning. I printed some screenshots and sealed them in a manila envelope. On the outside, I wrote in block letters, Westwick Hills High Guidance Office. Urgent. Private. Then one morning before school, I slipped into the office and dropped it in their outgoing mail tray while no one was watching. I didn't include my name. I didn't need to. 3 days later, the school was buzzing. Rumors flew. A girl cried in the hallway. Teachers called students into their offices. The principal looked stressed every time he passed by. Then Dylan got pulled from class. He came home early that day, furious. Slammed his bedroom door so hard the frame cracked. Mom followed him in, demanding answers. I leaned near my door and listened. I didn't do anything. Dylan shouted. It was a stupid party. Mom's voice was tight. They said there's a video. They said it's you. Yeah, well, they have no proof I put it online. I didn't do anything illegal. I smiled. He didn't know the real storm hadn't even started. That night, dinner was quiet. Dad didn't say a word. He just stared at Dylan like he was sizing him up. And for once, no one looked at me like the problem. But that tiny win wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel what I felt. The fear, the silence, the loneliness. So I pushed further. I created a fake email under a different name and used it to send screenshots of the party videos to the school board, the parents' Facebook group, and 3 local journalists who'd covered teen drinking stories before. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. By Friday, the entire town knew. It was on the local news. Not the full story, just that several high school seniors were under investigation for an incident involving alcohol, misconduct, and student safety. Dylan's face wasn't on the screen, but everyone at school knew. He stopped going to classes. He stopped leaving the house. Mom cried a lot. Dad shouted even more. I stayed quiet and smiled when no one was looking. But something unexpected happened. Dylan got angrier. Not ashamed. Not regretful. Angrier. He stormed around the house like a caged animal, slamming cabinets, punching walls. One night, I passed him in the hallway, and he stared at me like he knew, like he felt it. "You think you're better than me now," he said, standing way too close. "You think you're clever." I didn't say a word. I walked away, but that stare stayed with me all night. I started locking my door. I didn't feel safe, even with all the power I had now. Then one night, everything spun out of control. It was storming outside, wind howling, rain hitting the windows like bullets. The power flickered off around 11 p.m. I was lying in bed, listening to the storm, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, heavy. Then I heard my doorknob rattle. Once. Twice. It was locked. Then bam. A hard kick. Then another. I jumped out of bed, heart racing. "Dylan." I shouted. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer, just kept kicking. Harder. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight just as the door burst open. He stood there in the doorway, soaked from sweat, chest heaving, eyes wild. "I know it was you," he growled. "You ruined my life." He stepped into the room. I backed away, holding up my phone. "I'll scream." He smiled. "No one's home." That's when I ran past him, but he grabbed my arm tight. I screamed so loud it hurt my throat. He yanked me back, shoved me toward the bed. My shoulder hit the frame. Then I heard it, front door opening. "Ellie." It was Jada. She had come over to check on me because I hadn't replied to her texts all day. She ran into the room and froze when she saw us. "What the hell are you doing?" she screamed at Dylan. He let go of me. "You're lucky," he spat, backing out. "Next time, there won't be anyone here to save you." He disappeared down the hallway. Jada ran to me, arms shaking, her voice panicked. "Are you okay?" I nodded, barely breathing. He tried to hurt me again. She pulled out her phone. "We're calling someone. Now." I grabbed her wrist. "No cops yet," I whispered. "I need to finish this first." She stared at me like I was crazy, but I meant it. I wasn't just going to survive this time. I was going to end it on my terms. And I had one last card to play. I didn't sleep that night, even with Jada by my side. Every creak in the house made my chest tighten. I locked the bedroom door and pushed my desk in front of it. But still, my eyes stayed wide open, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling while my heartbeat thudded in my ears. Dylan had crossed a line. He wasn't just a bully anymore. He was dangerous. But I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I planned. By morning, I had a new idea. Bigger than just exposing videos. Bigger than making people whisper his name with shame. I was going to take away the only thing Dylan still had, his future. His dream had always been to get into Northlake Tech, a school known for its elite computer science program. He bragged about it constantly. He even had a stack of brochures on his dresser and a school hoodie here every week, like he already belonged there. And guess what? Applications were open. I knew he was going to apply that week. So I made sure Northlake heard from me first. I used my fake email account and sent the admissions office a detailed message. I told them everything without naming myself. I wrote about Dylan's role in the Fall Bash videos. I mentioned how those videos were under investigation by our school. I included links to the party clips, saved anonymously on a cloud drive. I listed dates, times, names. I even attached a screenshot of Dylan holding a beer in one hand while yelling, "She's not even awake," in that awful video. Then I ended the email with one line. "You may want to reconsider if this is the type of student who belongs at Northlake Tech." I hit send, and then I waited. Meanwhile, Jada refused to let me stay in that house alone. Her mom called mine and said I was spending the week with them to focus on school. To my surprise, Mom didn't argue. Maybe she was too wrapped up in Dylan's drama, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Either way, I packed my bags again and left without looking back. That week, the walls started closing in on Dylan. The school called a second meeting with Mom and Dad. Dylan wasn't allowed back in class until the investigation ended. The other kids involved were getting suspended left and right. And Dylan? He stormed out of the school office in tears. Real ones. Jada's cousin, who worked at the front desk, told us he screamed at the principal, "This isn't fair! Someone's framing me." No one believed him anymore. That night, back at Jada's, we sat on her bed scrolling through Instagram when I got the email. From Northlake Tech. I froze, opened it, read it once, twice, then laughed, out loud. They thanked me for the submission. They said they were aware of the incident and would be reviewing Dylan's application very carefully. They also said they had zero tolerance for student conduct that endangered others on or off campus. I didn't need them to say the words. I knew. He was done. The next day, Dylan got the letter. He didn't say a word to anyone. But that night, the sound of something shattering echoed from his bedroom. Later, when Dad walked in to check, Dylan just whispered, "I lost everything." And I smiled, but I wasn't finished. See, Dylan wasn't the only one who needed to learn a lesson. My parents had watched me suffer, ignored my bruises, ripped the phone from my hands when I begged for help. They protected him over and over again because it was easier than facing the truth. I couldn't let them walk away from this untouched. So I did something bold. I wrote a letter, not an email, a real letter, typed, clean, printed, folded. I sent it to Mom's workplace. I knew she'd open it privately. In that letter I wrote everything. How they'd silenced me. How they chose their son's comfort over their daughter's safety. How I'd saved copies of every message they sent blaming me for my own bruises. How I'd hidden audio recordings, like the one of Dad saying, "Drama queen again," right after Dylan broke my nose. And I ended it with this: "You can pretend to be a good mother in public, but I'll make sure the world knows what you did in private if you don't make this right." I gave her a choice: take accountability or lose everything. I sent a second letter to Dad's auto shop. Same contents, same threat. Jada thought I was crazy. Maybe I was, but I wasn't lying, because I had one more plan. If they didn't apologize publicly, I was going to make them the main characters in their own scandal. I had emails ready to go to the town's community blog, posts drafted for Facebook and Reddit, everything carefully worded, polished, undeniable. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. But power doesn't always come clean. The next morning, I got a call from Mom. She didn't even say hello. "You're threatening us now," she snapped. I stayed calm. "No, I'm telling the truth. You're just scared people will finally hear it." She was silent for a second. Then, "What do you want, Ellie?" And I said, "I want you to stand in front of Dylan and Dad and say out loud what you did to me. And I want you to say you were wrong." She hung up. But that night, I got a message from Dad. Just 3 words. "Come home. Tomorrow." Jada begged me not to go. She was terrified. I was too. But I needed this. So the next afternoon, I walked through the front door of the house that had once been my prison. The living room was quiet. Dylan sat on the couch, arms crossed. Mom stood near the window. Dad leaned against the kitchen counter, jaw tight. "Sit," Mom said softly. I did. She looked at me, eyes red, then said something I never thought I'd hear. "I'm sorry." She paused. "For not protecting you. For calling you a drama queen. For choosing Dylan when I should have seen you were hurting." Then Dad added, "We failed you. And I don't know if we can fix it. But we want to try." And Dylan? He didn't say a word. Didn't look at me. But that was fine. Because in the silence, I heard everything I needed. Still, the moment wasn't over. Because just as I stood to leave, my bag already in my hand, my phone buzzed. A new email. From the school. Subject line: Dylan Matthews Emergency Expulsion Hearing Notice. I smiled, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. I didn't say a word when I saw the subject line. I just locked my phone screen, slipped it into my pocket, and walked out of the house without looking back. My parents didn't try to stop me. Dylan didn't even lift his head. There was no hug. No, "We love you." Only silence. And that was fine, because silence was safer than lies. Back at Jada's, I finally opened the email. It was short and formal. Cold, even. Due to multiple reports and supporting evidence received by administration and outside parties, Dylan Matthews is scheduled for an emergency expulsion hearing on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Attendance is mandatory for the student and at least one parent or guardian. They had already contacted the other students and their families. Witnesses would be present. The administration had reviewed video and audio materials and were treating it as a matter of student safety and school liability. I reread the line, "emergency expulsion." It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and finally seeing the rocks below give way. Except this time, I wasn't the one falling. Jada gasped when I told her. He's really getting expelled? Looks like it, I said calm. She shook her head. You did it, Elle. You actually did it. Not yet, I thought. Not all the way. Because expulsion wasn't enough. Dylan still had people who believed he was just a kid who made a mistake. He still had mom's soft looks and dad's blind offenses. He still lived in the same house, walked the same streets, wore the same smug face. And I still had one more piece of revenge to deliver. See, over the past few months, I hadn't just collected videos and messages. I'd kept everything, down to every bruised wrist, every time I asked for help and was told I was overreacting. And I was ready to share it, publicly, anonymously at first. I created a Reddit account under the name User No More and posted the full story. No names, no school identifiers, just raw truth. From the broken nose to the stolen phone to the cast iron skillet, I laid it all out. People believed me. They offered support. One user commented, "This is what happens when families protect abusers. You did the right thing." Another said, "I went through something similar. You're not alone." That night, the post hit the front page of a local subreddit. And the next morning, someone found it. Not just anyone. Ms. Benton, my chemistry teacher. She called me into her classroom before homeroom. Jada waited outside, ready to run in if things went sideways. Ms. Benton closed the door and sat across from me. "Ellie," she said gently, "was that your post?" I looked down. "Yes," I whispered. She didn't scold me. She didn't report me. She leaned in and said, "Thank you. That story is going to help people." Then she added something that caught me off guard. "You know, I believed you, even before I saw it. I just didn't know how to help. I'm sorry for that." I nodded, eyes wet but proud. Later that week, I watched from a distance as Dylan and my parents walked into the school building for the hearing. I didn't go. I didn't need to be there. He would face them without me. But I waited outside in Jada's car, parked around the block, engine running. 45 minutes passed. Then Mom came out first, her face pale, lips tight. Dad followed, red-faced and furious. And behind them, Dylan walked like someone had unplugged him. No swagger, no anger, just a blank stare and a thin folder clutched in his hands. Jada and I ducked down as they passed. "You think it's over now?" she asked softly. I shook my head. Almost. The school announced the expulsion the next day. Dylan's name wasn't made public, but everyone knew. News spread fast in Westwick Hills. Some kids defended him. Most didn't. One of the girls in the videos came forward anonymously. Seeing the footage gave her the courage to speak up. I sent her a message, also anonymously, thanking her for being brave. That weekend I got an email. From Dylan. Just one sentence. "You ruined my life." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "You started it." Then I blocked his address. But fate wasn't done yet. Because just as I started to breathe again, another message popped into my inbox. This time from my old therapist, someone Mom had made me see when I was 12 because I cried too much. She said she'd read my post, and she remembered me. She'd even documented signs of abuse back then, but said my parents refused follow-up care. "Ellie," she wrote, "if you ever want to pursue this legally, I still have the records." My breath caught in my throat. Legal action. The thought scared me, but it also lit something inside me I hadn't felt in years. Hope, control, power, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. But before I could decide, the front door of Jada's house flew open. Jada's little brother shouted, "Ellie, you need to see this." I rushed to the living room. On TV, on the actual local news, was a report. An anonymous whistleblower had exposed misconduct involving a local high school student, underage drinking and parental negligence. Photos from Dylan's party, blurred screenshots of texts, a black bar over my broken nose, and then footage from the hospital, Security cam images of me at 17, holding my face, with Mom next to me looking annoyed. And that's when they played it. Audio. The clip I'd recorded. Mom's voice. "What are you doing?" Then Dad's. "Drama queen again." It was everywhere. And suddenly it wasn't just revenge. It was justice. But just when I thought it was over, a knock came at the door. I opened it, and standing there on the porch was a man in a suit holding an envelope. "Ellie Matthews." I nodded slowly. He handed me the envelope. "I represent a party mentioned in your recent online posts," he said. "You've been formally served." My hands shook as I opened the document. Inside was a cease and desist order from my parents, claiming defamation. My mouth went dry. Jada looked over my shoulder and whispered, "They're coming after you?" I nodded, but I didn't feel scared. Not this time. I looked up at the man and said calmly, "Tell them to bring it on." I stood there on Jada's porch, envelope in hand, wind blowing my hair into my face as the man in the suit walked back down the steps like he had just delivered a pizza, not a threat from the people who were supposed to protect me. Inside that envelope was a cease and desist letter. Mom and Dad wanted me to withdraw all statements and refrain from further defamation of character, or they'd pursue legal action. They didn't deny anything in the letter. They just wanted me to stop talking, to stay quiet, to let the story fade like they always expected it would. I walked back inside, shut the door, and stared at the document. Jada crossed her arms. "They really think they can sue you after everything they did." I sat down on the couch, numb. "They're scared," I said finally. "Not of the truth, of people knowing the truth." "Are you going to stop?" she asked. "No," I whispered. And I meant it, because this wasn't just about me anymore. The girl in the video, the Reddit users who messaged me, the students who came up to me in the hallway when no one was looking and said, "I believe you." Stopping would mean going silent for every single one of them, and I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I got to work. The next day, I walked into the office of a legal aid center 2 towns over, the Bright Path Legal Foundation. I brought everything. The letters, the videos, the audio, my therapist's note, and the photos of my broken nose. A woman named Deandra sat across from me. She had silver hair, sharp eyes, and didn't blink once while I told my story. When I finished, she said, "You're not the one who should be scared of court." She offered to represent me, free of charge. Turns out what my parents had sent wasn't a real lawsuit. It was a scare tactic. And Deandra? She knew exactly how to flip the script. Within 2 days, she filed a counter motion, not only rejecting the cease and desist, but also building a civil case against my parents for negligence, emotional abuse, and retaliatory intimidation. And Dylan? She said he could be added as a co-defendant if we decided to push. We sent them our own formal letter. It was simple. "We decline your cease and desist. Please refer all further communication through legal representation. And be advised, counteraction is already in motion." I didn't expect a response so fast, but that Friday night, I got a knock on Jada's door. It was my dad, alone. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking small in a way I'd never seen before. Jada's mom stepped between us, arms crossed. "You're not coming in here." "I just need 5 minutes," he said. I should have said no, but something in me wanted to hear what lie he'd come to tell. So I stepped out onto the porch, leaving the door open behind me. He didn't look me in the eyes. "Your mom's not okay," he mumbled. "She hasn't been sleeping. She's scared she'll lose her job." I folded my arms. "You mean, now that people know what she did?" He flinched. "I didn't come to argue," he said. I want this to stop." "No," I said coldly. "You want the consequences to stop, not the truth." He finally looked at me then, and for the first time I saw real guilt, not just anger or fear of being exposed, but guilt. "Ellie," he said quietly, "I didn't know it was that bad." "You called me a drama queen while blood poured out of my nose," I snapped. "You knew. You just didn't care." He closed his eyes, then said the one thing I never thought he would. "I'm sorry." Silence stretched between us. I didn't say I forgave him, because I didn't, but I nodded, and I turned around and walked back into the house. That night I got another email. This one was different. It wasn't from my family. It was from a podcast producer in Chicago. She said she'd read my Reddit post, followed the trail, and tracked down my anonymous account. She wanted to interview me, not just for an episode, for an entire miniseries on family abuse, silence, and revenge. At first, I didn't answer, but something about the idea wouldn't leave my head. I wasn't just the scared girl from Westwick Hills anymore. I was the voice of a story a lot of people knew, but very few ever told. The next day, I said yes. We recorded the first interview that weekend. I told everything. The night Dylan broke my nose. The moment my mom ripped the phone from my hands. My dad muttering, "Drama queen again," while I bled on the floor. The podcast team said it was powerful, but I wasn't doing it for praise. I was doing it so no other girl sitting in a room full of pain and silence would feel like she was crazy. And still the storm kept building. Because 3 days after the podcast released its trailer, my parents' house was vandalized. Someone threw eggs at their front door, spray-painted liars on the garage. The neighborhood group chat exploded. My parents told the police they were being harassed because of their daughter's lies. But I didn't condone it. I didn't want violence. I just wanted truth. That week, the principal called me into her office. She asked if I'd be willing to speak at the school assembly. I paused. Then I said yes. And the night before the assembly, I stood in front of the mirror, practicing my speech. My hands trembled, but my voice, steady, until my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. A voice, shaky male, came through the line. "Ellie." It was Dylan. He sounded like he hadn't slept in days. "I know you hate me," he said, "and you should, but I need help." I didn't respond. "I'm not okay," he continued. "I don't know who I am anymore. Everything's gone." Good, I thought. But then he said something that made my breath catch. "I think about ending it sometimes, and I don't have anyone left." Silence. Just that one sentence, sitting in the dark air between us. I felt frozen, because this wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't revenge. This was something else. "I don't forgive you," I said softly, "but I don't want you dead either." Then I ended the call and stared at the wall, because now the question wasn't what more could I do to them. It was what kind of person did I want to become after everything they did to me. And as I walked into that school auditorium the next morning, microphone in hand, eyes watching from every corner, I realized the final chapter wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about something much bigger. The auditorium lights were hot on my face, and the quiet hum of students whispering and shuffling in their seats filled the air like static. Rows of kids from every grade sat in front of me, some bored, some curious, and some watching me like they already knew the story. A microphone stood in the center of the stage. I approached it slowly. I took a deep breath, and I spoke. "My name is Ellie Matthews. Some of you know me. Some of you think you do." My voice echoed in the room, shaky at first, but gaining strength with each word. "I want to tell you a story about silence, about fear, and about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you don't." And I did. I told them about Dylan. The night he broke my nose. The way I reached for help, and my mom snatched the phone from my hand. The way my dad, without even looking at me, muttered, "Drama queen again." A gasp moved through the crowd. I told them how I tried to report it, how no one believed me, how my brother continued to hurt others, how the school eventually stepped in, but only after someone else saw what I saw. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. They already knew. When I finished, there was no applause, just silence. And then, slowly, someone stood up. It was a girl from the junior class. She looked nervous, but then she raised her voice and said, My brother hurt me, too. Another voice. My mom told me I was lying. Then more. One by one. Voices rising. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. And neither did they. After the assembly, the principal pulled me aside. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen a student do, she said. Thank you. But it wasn't about being brave. It was about being done. Done carrying the shame they handed me. Done protecting people who never protected me. That afternoon, I walked home by myself for the first time in weeks. The sky was cloudy, but the wind felt good. Light. I wasn't scared anymore, until I turned onto my street and saw the car parked in front of Jada's. My heart dropped. It was my mom's. I wanted to walk past it. I wanted to pretend she wasn't sitting there, waiting for me like nothing had happened. But she got out before I could pass. Ellie, she called. Please. I froze. She looked smaller, not in size but in spirit, like life had crushed her, and she was finally standing in the rubble, realizing she'd helped knock it all down. I know you don't owe me anything, she said quietly, but I need you to hear me. Just this once. I didn't say no. I just stood there. She stepped closer. I failed you, she said. Every step of the way. I protected Dylan because I didn't want to believe what he was becoming. I told myself I was keeping the family together, but I wasn't. I was destroying it. Her eyes filled with tears. I let him hurt you, and I let myself believe it was your fault. I can't take it back, but I need you to know if I could trade places with you in that moment, I would. I didn't cry. I didn't forgive her, but I nodded. I'm not your daughter anymore, I said softly. Not in the way you want, but I'm alive, and I'm stronger than you ever let me be. She covered her mouth and sobbed quietly. I turned and walked into Jada's house. That was the last time I saw my mother. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. From North Lake Tech. Not for Dylan. For me. Apparently, the podcast had reached someone on their admissions team. They wanted to invite me to apply. With a full scholarship. They wrote, "Your strength and voice are exactly what we hope to bring into our campus culture." I sat on Jada's porch and stared at the letter for 10 minutes. Then I screamed. Jada came running out, saw the letter, and screamed with me. The future I thought Dylan stole from me, I had just taken it back. And I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. The podcast series aired in full 2 months later. It gained traction quickly, shared by advocacy groups, teachers, students. It even caught the attention of a nonprofit focused on abuse survivors, and they reached out asking if I'd consider becoming a youth spokesperson. I said yes. I traveled to different cities, standing on stages, holding microphones, telling the truth. Each time I did, I felt the weight lift a little more. Dylan? He ended up finishing high school through a local program under supervision. He didn't go to North Lake. He didn't go to any college. Last I heard, he was working at a warehouse 2 towns over. We never spoke again, and I never answered his last text. Do you still hate me? Because some questions don't deserve answers. Not when you've already found peace. Not when you've already won. Not when the girl they called a drama queen becomes the one who rewrites the entire ending. My name is Ellie Matthews, and this was never just a story about revenge. It was a story about reclaiming everything they tried to take away from me, and letting the silence finally end with my voice. Forever.